retired journalist now. I majored in journalism at Indiana University. And, about the turn of the century, um, I met Matt Clare online through interest in basketball. And we've known each other since. Um, we first met at a business convention in Las Vegas. Uh, we shared time together in San Antonio some years back. We stayed close. I consider him a very good friend of mine. But I'm here today to talk to him about a difficult journey he has taken over the last, 6 or 7 years. He knows those numbers better than I do. Um, Mac was a high school basketball player, probably one of the most knowledgeable people about basketball I've ever known. I know he's also a very kind and caring person who would and has literally given the shirt off his back when he thought it would help somebody. And I have a lot of respect for him. And I'm here today just to talk with him about what he's gone through and the ups and downs over the last several years as he's been battling with first getting a diagnosis of why he was experiencing pain and what he's learned and what he's gone through. And I'll probably share some of my thoughts about what I've seen through that process. So here's Matt Clare.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you for, in advance, I want to tell the viewers, uh, I want to thank Mark for putting up with me for not only today, but for all these years. We've known each other, oh God, 20 some odd years now. And he hasn't kicked me out of his life yet. So, but, in terms of the number, Mark, is actually 10 years. Uh, Yeah, I know you have some questions lined up, but I'll just volunteer this. I was diagnosed with having polycythemia vera. That's a blood cancer where you produce too much blood. Uh, and that was back in August of 2015. And then last year in March, my polycythemia vera had progressed to something called myelofibrosis, which actually is the worst of the two. If you have PV, you don't want it to progress. There's no cure for it, but the idea is to try and control it and prevent it from progressing. But in my case, it progressed to myelofibrosis, and again, diagnosed in March. And then the fun began. So, yeah, but I know you got some questions, so I don't want to take your thunder away.
Well, I do have some questions. I think in many cases I have a good idea of the answer, but this is your journey and it's unique to you, but it's probably relatable to many other people who have had to face knowledge that they were not healthy, they were in trouble, and even their own mortality. And I know you've given a lot of thought um, to what this could mean to other people, and I think I'm correct that you were considered somebody else. Just let go. Just let go. So I would like to hear now and share with some other people some of your thought processes. Going back to even your frustration, you were having pain in your chest, and doctors didn't seem to even listen to you and couldn't figure out what it was, to getting to where you had the first diagnosis. And I'm certainly wasn't something you expected and was a shock. And you kind of explained to me and others some of the processes you went through, and I know you're very good at being real, the highs and the lows, and the really the exhilaration of sometimes when things have gone well, and then the real valleys when all of a sudden, oh no, this isn't good at all, and wow, do I want to still be here tomorrow? Or yes, I'm going to be here tomorrow.
Yeah, I've good grief, man, I've had a number of those moments. You know, it was a quick moment, and I'll talk about that later. But you know, I I want to start with the whole. Yeah, I want to do this kind of chronologically, and you had mentioned the chest pain that I was having back in early, I think it was early 2015, and it was really a chest bone pain. And but when you go to the doctor, that's not always what they hear. They hear chest pain. And so the first time I went, I don't know if they somehow got distracted. They were looking at something else with me. Didn't find anything. That was in March of 2015. I went back in August because it was really bothering me. And so August 15th, that was uh, that was the date that I went back, and I emphasized to them chest bone pain. And so this time, though, again, hearing chest pain, they went in, they took blood, and they did some other tests, tested my heart. And they came back and said, well, there's nothing wrong with your heart, but we suspect something very wrong with your blood. And so they suspected it was polycythemia vera. They sent me to a cancer clinic where it was confirmed. And, that was sort of the life altering moment. Uh, but I will have you know, Mark, when and the doctor's name was Dr. Dagabadi. And when she confirmed it, I kind of asked her, okay, how are we going to kick Polly's ass? That's what I call polycythemia vera. So how are we going to kick Polly's ass? And she was kind of shocked by my reaction, I guess. But I held it to the fire. She said, yes, we could. No, you got to make me feel it. I need to know that everybody on my medical staff, on my medical team, that they believe we're going to win. So she thought about it for a minute. She said, yes, yes, we're going to kick Poland's ass. I said, okay.
Yeah.
So now I knew that I had somebody on my team, who believed. She made me believe that she believed. And so I dealt with PV for 10 years. Uh, it did progress. I moved on to uh, another oncologist up in San Antonio named Dr. Sherber, Dr. Robert Sherber. And
Man,
yes,
could you fill us in on why you made the change of doctors there? Was that because you had a different condition to deal with?
at that time, no, uh, Dr. Gabati was wonderful, but I had an opportunity to be with the doctor who was more seasoned and who was more specialized. And, people who deal with blood cancers, they've probably heard the name Dr. Ruben Mesa. Dr. Mesa was out there at the Mayo Clinic in Arizona, and one of the people he mentored was Dr. Sherman. And knowing how good and how thorough Dr. Mesa was, uh, I knew that getting with Dr. Sherman was the next best thing. And so that's why I made the switch. It was nothing to do with Dr. Dagabadi, who I absolutely love. In fact, one day I went to her office. She had done some tests, and so now we're getting ready to talk about the results. So I said, "So what do you think, doctor? Am I going to live?" She said, "Oh, yeah, but you're asking the wrong question." I said, "What question should I ask? You should be asking how long you're going to be living." So, you know, but so she was a great doctor, and, I'll always appreciate her. But Dr. Sherber was really a number of things. There were different medications. I don't want to bore you with the names, and I don't want people to scramble to go looking. But, you know, one one medication. If it didn't work, we moved on to the next one, and we were trying to find what worked. But in the meantime, from August 2015 until I was diagnosed in March of 2025, uh, you know, PV was progressing, you know, and so I ended up with myelofibrosis, and Dr. Sherber at this point said, "We need to get you to an even better specialist, someone more seasoned, somebody even more specialized." And so that's how I was introduced to my current doctor, Dr. Zogi. He's a bone marrow transplant specialist. And, he's, I won't say he's an in your face kind of guy, but he pulls no punches. He tells you like it is, just what you need to know. And so we set up a plan, you know, and so the plan eventually became that I would go in for a bone marrow transplant back in November of last year, and uh, it was delayed. That we'll get to that in a moment. It was delayed for a little bit, but finally, back on November 21st, I was admitted into Methodist Hospital up in San Antonio, and on the 27th, that's when they actually did the bone marrow transplant. Uh, Sadly enough, it failed. Uh, I might have been partially at fault for that because when you go through the transplant, first they do chemo and radiation and all that, and you are absolutely zapped of your uh, your energy. I mean, numerous symptoms. And, folks, those of you listening, please understand the symptoms are different for everyone. All right. Uh, it could range from vomiting to feeling weak, just nausea without the vomiting, headaches, any number of different things. Uh, Thankfully, I didn't deal with too much, but one of the things it does is it leaves this nasty, filmy taste in your mouth, and it's a little bit on the thick side. So you don't necessarily want to eat. Uh, you know, for me, eating was a challenge. And look at me, I'm thin as it is, and I lost a lot of weight when I was in the hospital. But uh, eating was a big challenge. Taking those meds was a challenge because I didn't want to take my meds, and you gotta take the meds in order to survive. And it was tough. It was really tough. But usually when you're in there for the transplant, they keep you in the hospital for about a month, and then they release you. But there's more because in my case, I lived in a place called New Braunfels, Texas, which is roughly an hour or so from San Antonio, from the hospital. And when you have this sort of procedure, the doctor wants to see you every other day, and in some cases, maybe every day. So now I had to worry about where I was going to live once I was released. Uh, and I ended up getting an Airbnb and it was paid for through a grant, so I didn't have to worry about coming out of pocket. Uh, and oh yeah, by the way, for all the stuff that was going on, remember I said they keep you for a month usually. I was out of there in 2 weeks, and that was a win. That was definitely a win. But man, it was also tough because that meant 2 more weeks that I have to go back and forth. So it wasn't fun, uh, and it was a challenge. And it took me. Let's see, I was there. I was there in the beginning of December. Let's say I don't remember the exact date. I was there until April, I think. I want to say late March, early April. And so things progressed, things improved. But I was meanwhile going back and forth. I had a couple of stays in the hospital. Uh, February 13th uh, of this year, I had a terrible fall in the Airbnb. And I suffered from something called subdural hematoma, which means brain bleed. You're bleeding in the brain. And so that was, they rushed me to the hospital that night. That was just another challenge. And I injured my shoulders and my arms, my hands and finger, everything. And so I couldn't get out until I could prove to them that I could at least somewhat function. And so that was a long stay. Another time I went back because I was a little concerned about my leg. My leg was bothering me. And Dr. Zogi didn't want to take any chances. He admitted me to the hospital for that. So I was there for another couple of days. Uh, so, and then there was another time, and this was the big one because uh, at this point, I still wasn't eating that well. And this is going back in March, I think. Uh, I was eating better, but, the numbers were not suggesting that I was putting on weight. The numbers weren't suggesting that, the numbers were going in the right direction. By numbers, I mean, you know, when you have this procedure, it zaps you of all your cells, your blood cells. And so now you want the blood cells to come back. And in my case, remember, I had a donor. I want my donor cells to dominate, but it didn't. Mine did, but I'll get back to that in a moment. But in any event, things weren't trending the way in which it needed to. And so we set me back in the hospital. And so it was tough. It was real tough. But through it all, I knew that I'd be okay. Uh, you know, you gotta have some kind of dependability on faith. And I urge you all, whatever higher being that you subscribe to, you want to latch onto it for something like this. And so at some point, yes, sure,
Um, we've had conversations, and you talked about your faith and your belief. I'm going to beat this. But you also shared with me that there were times that you had your doubts.
yeah,
You were tired, and you expressed to me
go
your
ahead, tell
expect.
it.
Other people would have the same moments, and times of doubt, times feeling like giving up, and that was something you considered a lot. It did affect your decisions and so on. Um, and I felt we had some good conversations about just quality of life, the overall meaning of life, And I'll let you go on, but I would like to get to uh, as you look back now, um, in a good place physically compared to where you could have been and where you were. You know, your thoughts now. Uh, Again, this is your experience, what you've been through, but how worth it was it to you? Would you do it again? Are there things you might do differently, knowing what you have learned?
Yeah, that's actually a real good question because, so I had the bone marrow transplant and then I had what they call the stem cell boost. And for those who don't know, the stem cell boost is really very much like the transplant minus chemo and minus radiation. Uh, but now to have another transplant, an actual second bone marrow transplant, your chances of surviving that are 50-50. So back to your question, would I do it over again? If they ever told me that my best chance of getting through this was uh, to attempt a second bone marrow transplant, it's a tough question to answer. But at that point, see, I don't like the odds 50-50. I don't like the odds 50-50. And I don't know that I would. I think at that point, I would seriously consider, you know, the alternative because now you're talking about real quality of life uh, changes. And, you know, my sweetie Annette, she's been with me through all of this every day. And she never complained or anything, but I know at times it made her tired, wore her out. Uh, and I wouldn't want that for her. I wouldn't want that to continue for her. I'd want her to get on with her life. This is real serious stuff. And somebody told me once, well, wanting to leave this world, that's kind of selfish. I said, nah. I said, I hear what you're saying, but I don't think I'm being selfish. The last thing I want to do is be selfish. But sometimes you have to make real tough life decisions, and it might result in death. And that's just how it is. Uh, I did tell you that there were a few times where I thought that if things continued the way they were going, because remember at this time there didn't seem to be any indication that things were improving, and so at this point, yeah, I'm kind of saying, well, you know, let me go ahead and those of you who are spiritual will understand when I say, let me go ahead and open this window and I go to sleep. Well, in the spiritual realm, you open your window and you know your spirit. They say your spirit goes out the window when you die. And so I did have one night where I thought I was kind of ready, you know, but I I woke up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and I remember I happened to look up at the mirror at myself. Now, for those of you who have little ones in the room, cover their ears and let them walk out because I'm going to get real for a minute. So I looked in the mirror and I said, "You forgot who the fuck you are. You really forgot who the fuck you are. You don't lie down. You don't give up." And at that time, that might have been my dad talking. My dad's been gone for 20 years or so, 21 years. But he's always been my North Star. And he always knew when I needed that kick in the butt. But whether it was him or whether it was just me, myself, I was like, okay, I got to go get him. And so I went back to bed, woke up the next morning, and it was okay. I was all right after that, you know. Uh, But there was one other time where uh, I had those thoughts that maybe this is it, you know, and that was the night of my fall, and my girlfriend, she held my big head in her hand, and I had a broken nose too, so I'm bleeding. And she's trying to call 911. I'm like, baby, I don't know if I'm gonna make it through this. I don't think I'm gonna come out of this. Don't you say that? And I'll never forget when she told me that. That kind of straightened me up a little too. But yeah, so it's been rough. It's been real rough.
Can I interject an editorial comment here?
Sure.
Um, as I've been through part of this journey with you, and I want to share this for other people who are listening because it's difficult for those of us not on the journey to try to be with the person on the journey when you don't know where it's going. And Mac, you remember there were times when things were very questionable, and we were talking about whether you keep fighting or you let things happen. And I made it a point, as difficult as it was, never to push you either direction. But I did not want to, and again, I'm editorializing here, I did not want to put pressure on you to make the decision that wasn't right for you. And I don't know if I was being helpful or not, but you and I have talked about how difficult this is for others. And that's why I'm sharing this moment because um, it's hard on everybody. And for me, I try to look at everything as objectively as I can and try to take emotion out of it um, without letting compassion go and understanding and putting myself in the place of somebody in this case like you. And I've told you I wouldn't have made the same decisions, but that was for me. People know from my perspective here of the thought processes you have gone through, the emotions you've gone through, and while this has been and is your journey, in no way have you ever been alone.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And it's funny you end with those words because I will tell you, I never for a minute felt alone, Mark. Uh, and even that video I made when I was actually having the transplant, I made mention of that. Yeah, we're still recording. I don't know what you're seeing that for. How about now?
I see on air now, but for a moment it was on standby.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you told me that. But yeah.
Maybe
How
that's just
about
mine.
how about
Now it's
now?
on air. Yeah,
Okay.
now it's on.
All right. So yeah, I will tell you, I never for a moment felt like I was alone. And as a matter of fact, uh, as the days went by, it really did feel to me like my circle, my inner circle, it seemed to increase. I wasn't asking for it. I really wasn't, but it increased. And, people I just didn't know more. I didn't know that so many people were going to get on board and just, you said compassion, show how much they cared or that they cared. Uh, and I tell you, sometimes that alone has caused me to get a little emotional, bring a glow to my eye or whatever. But I've got such an abundance of support, and even now, and it's important to note, I am in remission. I have to remember to say that I'm in remission, and even now, I still feel the outpour of support from all these different avenues, and it's gratifying. It really is. So thank you for that. Yeah, you never left me alone. I know that. You you were right there with Annette, my son Marcus, uh, and so many other people uh, who didn't have to do what they did, and really might not seem like much. I mean, my family and my friends are spread out. Nobody's really here, except for one or two people, in addition to Annette. Well, even in distance, you can show somebody that you care, and even in distance,